Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar titled The Importance of Digital Lab Platforms and Why Bioprocessing Facilities Need to Adapt to Them. This webinar is part of the 5th annual event in the Bioprocessing Virtual Event Series. And I'm Susie Valdez of Labroots, and I will be your moderator for today's event. Today's educational web seminar is presented by Labroots and sponsored by eLabNext. For more information about eLabNext, go to eLabNext.com. Now let's get started. Before we begin, I want to remind everyone that this event is interactive, and we encourage you to participate by communicating with other attendees using our new live chat feature during this presentation. You can find that live chat located on the left of your screen. You can also participate by submitting as many questions as you'd like during this presentation. To do so, simply type them into the Ask a Question box and click Submit. We'll answer as many questions as we have time for at the end of the presentation. In addition to asking questions, we encourage you to participate in a 3-poll question at the end of the speaker's presentation. Click on that answer when the poll questions are displayed. Now, if you have any trouble seeing or hearing this presentation, just click on that help desk button located at the bottom of your screen within the navigation bar or from the lobby. And finally, as a reminder, this presentation is educational and offers free continuing education credits. Click on the continuing education credits link located in the abstract window below the presentation window and follow the process to obtain those credits. I now present today's speaker, Tyler Gurney, Key Account Manager at Lab Digitization Specialist at eLabNext. For a complete biography of our speaker, please visit the Presenter tab from the menu at the left of the screen. Tyler, welcome. You may now begin your presentation.
And thank you all for joining my webinar for the Bioprocessing Virtual Event Series. Today, we'll go over the importance of digital lab platforms and why bioprocessing facilities need to adapt them. By the end of this session, you should have a great understanding of the benefits of using digital lab platforms and why implementing them is of the utmost importance to the success of your bioprocessing facility. Before we get going, I just wanted to introduce myself quickly. So if you didn't already know, my name is Tyler, and I'm a lab digitization specialist with eLabNext. eLabNext is a division of Eppendorf, whom I'm sure you all recognize, and we are dedicated to helping companies in many industries across the globe transition to the digital age. I've been with the company for about a year now, but before coming here, I was a manufacturing supervisor for AbbVie in a high-throughput cell culture suite for about 5 or so years. I worked on many projects, including Skyrizi, Adelvion, and Entivio, and I've produced hundreds of successful batches of bulk drug product over my tenure in biotech. Shockingly, I also live a pretty normal life, participating in many extracurricular activities and sports, enjoying time with friends and family, and most importantly, my dog. I'm by no means an expert in one thing or another, but I do have a distinctive perspective on both bioprocessing and digital strategies. And so because of this, I'm in a unique position to offer up a bit of knowledge that I think could be very beneficial to you all. I tell you this all because I think it's important to build context so you get a better understanding of who I am and why I'm here. Okay, enough with the pleasantries. Let's move forward. So today, we'll go over what exactly a digital lab platform is, how electronic lab notebooks and digital lab platforms came to be, and why bioprocessing facilities should make the switch. Just a heads up to avoid confusion, throughout the presentation you'll hear me refer to digital lab platforms as DLPs and electronic lab notebooks as ELNs. Okay, so you're probably asking yourself, what the heck is a digital lab platform? Well, I'm glad you're asked. So a digital lab platform is a web-based software tool that provides a collaborative workspace for research researchers, scientists, and engineers to conduct experiments, analyze data, share findings, and so on. The main components of a DLP are an electronic lab notebook, which typically are used for experiment design and planning and data acquisition and analysis. They also include sample and inventory management, equipment management, protocol governance, instrument monitoring, and connectivities. So to put into simpler terms, a DLP is a workspace dedicated to the organization and management of every facet of the bioprocessing workflow. So let's take a look at how all of the components may look and function within a DLP. So let's start with the ELN and the sample or inventory management side of things. On the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see a snapshot of what a notebook entry might look like, including various data sets, test results, pictures, protocols, samples, you name it, all maintained in digital form. And on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see a snapshot of what your inventory management system may look like, including maintenance and management of all your storage units and equipment, as well as the samples and/or inventory items within them. Digging down further, your DLP might have a more well-defined space to manage all the metadata for each one of your samples in a well-thought-out and streamlined space. Speaking of equipment, managing individual assets is a chore in and of itself, which I'm sure most of you are aware. So why not have the digital lab platform do it for you? Here you can see how a DLP would be able to organize and structure all the necessary information associated with your assets. So from maintenance logs to validation and calibration cycles, and even managing equipment reservations. Oftentimes, protocol governance and adherence to protocols is a massive undertaking, and as I'm sure you're all aware, can occasionally go awry. So to help with this, many DLPs offer a way to organize and maintain all of your protocols, procedures, and SOPs, including version tracking, protocol sign-off, and automated calculations. And finally, what would a DLP be without the ability to connect to the various hardware and software that is used throughout your facility? Through various processes, DLPs have an almost unlimited range of connection possibilities, including the ability to pull specific data from your instruments into your digital lab platform, and vice versa. In this instance, on the right-hand side, you're seeing a live 24-hour snapshot of the temperature fluctuations of a -80 freezer being displayed directly in the DLP because of the connection between the temperature sensors themselves and the digital lab platform. All right, so now that we have a general idea of what a DLP is, let's quickly run through how DLPs came to be. For comparison's sake, let's just assume that the digital lab platform is much like the smartphone of your lab. It's the lab operating system that controls all the digital aspects of your research. So in the beginning, when we were still very much living in an analog world, we had a basic and simple version of the landline, right? Similarly, as far back as science goes, we started recording scientific theories and facts on physical notebooks and utilized these methods to track all of our research. From there, improvements in information processing led to the development of the first electronic lab notebooks in the 1990s, just around the same time that mobile phones came out. So these early systems, while revolutionary, were all bespoke solutions created by large pharma companies, and so they were more unique to their processes. Unfortunately, today, these types of platforms are typically outdated and clunky since they're not adaptable to, changing laboratory conditions. So this brings us to the late 2000s, where we saw the advent of the digital lab platform. Um, these are comprehensive solutions that encompass multiple different data systems, allowing different parts of the lab to digitally communicate with each other as a cohesive system, much like the benefits of a smartphone has over its predecessors. Okay, let's take a quick break from DLPs and let me paint you a story. Okay, so imagine you're a bioprocessing scientist or maybe even a manufacturing technician working in big pharma. And it's your first chance to lead a commercial drug manufacturing campaign that could result in millions of dollars of profit for your company. You've done months, maybe even years of prep work and scale processing to prove yourself and your campaign, hoping it all translate as smoothly as possible to the manufacturing floor. The stakes are clearly already high enough with your job and maybe even your reputation on the line. Then out of nowhere, the FDA decides to make a surprise visit. Crazy, right? So the audit process starts with a tour of the manufacturing suite. Auditors make several observations about the untidy and disorganized work environment and technicians not following SOPs or batch records. Then the FDA auditors bring into question the validity and origin of a particular piece of paperwork because it's missing, vital information. Um, you have the original file somewhere, or rather, someone somewhere knows where the original file is. The question is, where is it, and who is that person? Was it scanned into a computer somewhere, possibly living in a data silo? Was it filed away years ago, sent over to your records building? Who knows? Quality assurance is now hounding you for proof of this little piece of paper, and you can't do anything but hope and pray it turns up somewhere. So you search, and you search, and you search, and all you find is nothing. What a nightmare, right? Again, I'm not sure if this story resonates with anyone here, but it sure does with me. Why? Because I actually lived it. I have my own similar version of this story that ended up being a big headache and definitely a lesson learned. And the old saying is, you learn from your mistakes, which holds true in most scenarios. But what if we never even had to make this mistake in the first place? So, why should you care? Well, imagine all of your work, your experimental data, your sample information, you know, lineage tracing, protocols, inventory management tools, all living on one cohesive platform. And if we go back to my story, what if I never had to worry about finding that long lost file from, 15 years ago, and had reports readily available for when the FDA shows up at our door? Well, as you can imagine, with digital lab platforms, you'll have all the tools necessary to remain organized and compliant in any bioprocessing facility. Now, there's a plethora of reasons to switch over to a DLP, but they ultimately boil down to four key points. So these are centrality, compliance, security, and efficiency. So let's dive into each one of these a little further. Okay, so first we have centrality. So again, maybe raise your hand if this resonates with you. Has anyone ever heard or dealt with data silos? And if you don't know what these are like the files within folders, within folders, within folders, many layers deep on someone's laptops. And my guess is you probably have. And if you have, you know how frustrating it is to find a very specific, maybe Excel sheet containing raw data through this, giant computational rat's nest. Or maybe, you have an inventory of thousands of samples distributed across, let's say, 20 different -80 freezers, and you're struggling to find the location of a certain, cell line from last year's campaign, let's say. Or maybe You're utilizing various modalities, digital and paper, to keep track of everything, and you're just struggling to juggle it all. Sounds pretty stressful, right? Well, the good news is, again, it doesn't have to be. So from keeping track of projects, experiments, assays, and test results, to maintaining a proper and structured inventory of samples and more, DLPs can be this sort of one-stop shop to keep everything under one roof. So again, no more data silos, no more questioning where a sample is living, and no more juggling multiple organizational tools. On top of this, many DLPs are also cloud-based, meaning you can access your work anywhere at any time. So that's a huge advantage. Okay, next we have compliance. Compliance has been a big part of my manufacturing career. I'm sure it has with yours as well in one way or another. And while you might think you have a decent handle on maintaining compliance, you can always consistently implement tools to make compliance more straightforward and definite. Um, Audit trails and traceability of things like status tags, log sheets, batch records, process changes, etc., are among the most highly scrutinized aspects of an FDA audit. And unfortunately, many facilities can't produce fully traceable change logs quickly or efficiently. So instead of trying to scrounge up this information yourself, let a DLP do it for you, right? Many DLPs on the market offer automated trail capabilities, audit trail capabilities, excuse me. So again, you don't have to worry about updating paper records. Even better, forgetting to update these particular documents is essentially just a thing of the past. Need to find out who did what at a specific date and time? No problem. Just search through your DLP using simple keywords, defined in search parameters to find this exact information in seconds. And let's not forget about adherence to SOPs or batch records. Many compliance issues stem from technicians going rogue or working too fast and missing critical steps of a process. DLPs can be set up with digital workflows by integrating SOPs and batch records together. So this sort of prevents, people straying off from working through an SOP. Also, with performer and witness signatures, they can also be structured to ensure every single step of an SOP is followed. One thing that often goes hand in hand with compliance is security. But what does it mean to be secure in a bioprocessing environment? I'm, of course, talking about the security of your data. So when thinking about your data and protected bioprocessing techniques, you should consider how this information will be kept securely. Luckily, many DLP providers have done the hard work for you already. Whether your DLP is cloud-based or not, you'll want to be sure some or all of the following security measures are in place: a dedicated security team, third-party penetration tests, servers hosted at a site with on-site security, multiple data centers with encrypted backup servers, disaster recovery features, single sign-on, two-factor authentication, user roles and permission settings, and IP restrictions. You'll also want to look for the following certifications and compliances: ISO 27701 certification. This includes the system itself, not just the cloud hosting provider. 21 CFR Part 11 compliance, GDPR compliance, GXP compliance, HIPAA compliance, and maybe in FedRAMP compliance. So again, your data is only as secure as the system that is hosted on. So be sure to do your homework and definitely make this a priority. And so while centrality, compliance, and security are the backbones of any great DLP, one of the most beneficial impacts of instituting a DLP in your bioprocessing environment is actually increasing efficiency in your day-to-day workflow. Let me ask you this. Aren't you sick of wasting time looking for something that's undefinable? Don't you wish you could automate basic tasks? think about everything you do through the average workday, right? Maybe this includes searching for reports or files, or looking for test results, or maybe even searching for those samples through your -80 freezers, checking inventory, stressing out about compliance, organizing the manufacturing or lab floor, and so on, right? Does this take up most of your day? My guess is probably yes. Well, at least that's, how I felt anyways. So when you lack the proper tools to do your job efficiently, much of that burden actually falls back on you, whether or not you want it to. Great DLPs actually make your life better and the lives of your colleagues better. And I mean your actual life, not just your work life. After all, if your work life is more efficient and better organized, the rest of your actual life will be that much better. So here are the key takeaways from this presentation. DLPs serve as a central location for your entire workflow, offering a better way to manage your information and data. DLPs also have many processes programmed internally to assist with compliancy. When thinking about your data and protected bioprocessing techniques, you should consider how this information will be kept securely. And when you lack the proper tools to do your job efficiently, much of that burden falls back on you. So if there's one message that I could have you take away from this this webinar today, it's that the best way to make your bioprocessing workflow more organized, compliant, secure, and efficient is to take the initiative and transition over to a digital lab platform. So I want to sincerely thank everyone for being here today. I hope you've gained some considerable and beneficial information. And with that, I'd like to open up the floor for questions.
Tyler, thank you for that presentation. And now we are going to ask the audience to join us for 3 poll questions, and we appreciate your participation. Our first question: which features of an ELN solution are most important to you and your team? Is it data organization? Is it sample tracking? Or is it security and compliance? And I'll give you a few seconds to check mark the one that identifies for you. Okay. Our second question is: on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to consider implementing an electronic notebook solution in your lab? Is it 1, no thank you, 5, this seems interesting, or 10, sign me up? And finally, our last question: would you be interested in scheduling a personalized demo of our ELN solution to see how it could benefit your lab specifically? Yes, please. Or nope, I'm all set. And again, I want to thank you for participating in these poll questions. And now I'd like to begin the Q&A portion of our webinar. And if you have any questions you want to ask, please do so now. Just click on the Ask a Question box located on the far left of your screen. So let's get started. Welcome back. And it looks like we have some great questions already coming in from our audience. Tyler, their first question is: can you share some specific examples of customers using digital tools and techniques to automate and improve the lab?
Yeah, sure. That's a good question. Actually, something that's become more popular as the years go on, especially if people are getting more interested in automation and things like that. So we have this one specific integration with a company called Automata. They're based in Europe, and they actually used to work in the food and beverage industry. They used automated robots to, to perform manufacturing processes for food and beverage customers. They decided to move over into biotech, and which worked for us. So we decided to partner up with them and sort of take over a specific liquid handling process in a wet lab setting. So the way it worked was our digital lab platform, eLabJournal, sort of acted as the central operating system for the automation features. So essentially, eLabJournal would tell the robots, specifically what to do. The robots would then, in turn, perform those actions, record the results, send it back to eLab, and essentially this loop went on back and forth for as many times as needed. And so that's just, one major integration that we've had with some sort of automation systems. But essentially the combinations are pretty much endless. So.
Thank you so much, Tyler. And our next audience member says, budgets are tight this year. How can we justify acquiring new software versus continuing to use the tools we already have, like Excel or OneNote?
Yeah. Budgets are probably the number one thing that, either prevents someone from adapting a digital lab platform or, scares them away. So, it's a very common question we get. Of course, using these free digital solutions are all well and good. But essentially you have to ask yourself a few questions. One, how scalable are your current, digital solutions? Is it going to meet your need in 5 years, in 10 years? Probably not. Secondly, how do I maintain a proper audit trail between multiple digital tools? You probably can't. And again, how much efficiency do you want to sacrifice just to save a couple bucks? And so I understand people are resistant to change, especially, if something is working, fine enough the way it is. But I think you'd be really surprised at, how beneficial something like a digital lab platform would be, and how affordable it is compared to, consumables or even equipment that you buy on a yearly basis. It's fractional as far as pricing goes compared to that. And if you think, just as an example, right? Let's say you're using a digital lab platform to manage your sample inventory for your, freezer bank. The amount of time spent, searching through your freezers, not knowing where your samples are, in turn, sort of wears on the compressor, the freezer. All of this just wastes energy and ends up, racking up maintenance bills. So all of that can be saved just by using a digital lab platform to manage your sample inventory. So just one example of, how that you can start thinking about budgets in that way.
Thank you so much. And we have some other questions coming in. Our IT has strict rules about new software and data security. How do you address these concerns?
Sure. Yeah, I mentioned in the webinar that most DLPs have a lot of strict security regulations that they need to abide by to begin with, right? Now, I would say like 99% of the time, these security certifications cover pretty much every need as far as, data security goes from an IT perspective. But if your IT teams is still very adamant about, having control over the data or just control over the process itself, there's always an option of an on-premises installation. So this would be the digital lab platform would be essentially installed on your internal server, and that would in turn be controlled and maintained by your IT team and not, the vendor company. So there's always a way to meet the strict rules of an IT team.
Thank you so much. It looks like we have one final question coming in. Can digital lab platforms integrate with external software or hardware?
Yeah, definitely. I sort of already gave an example for external hardware with the liquid handling robots in the first question. But you're not limited to just liquid handling robots. It can be anything. It can be something as simple as like a label printer in your lab, or an HPLC machine, something like that. And as far as software goes, the options are endless there as well, so long as the software has an open source API similar to what the digital lab platform would have. You can essentially connect and integrate the software with the digital lab platform. So this might look like something like, if you use a curating system to order consumable inventory, instead of having to use both your digital lab platform and that curating system, you could connect the two and essentially place your inventory orders directly from your digital lab platform. Another common example might be if you use some sort of data analysis software. There's always the possibility of connecting the digital lab platform with that data analysis software to essentially push and pull data back and forth between the two. So you're pulling data you might capture from an experiment in your digital lab platform over into your data analysis software, running the analysis, getting the results, and pushing that back into the digital lab platform. So again, options are essentially limitless there as well.
Tyler, I want to thank you for your time today. Would you like to provide any closing remarks for our audience before we go?
Yeah, I want to thank everyone for joining as well. Thanks for Labroots for having me. Hopefully you learned something out of this. So I can always be reached by email if anyone has any additional questions.
Well, I want to thank you again for your time and for your important research. And before we go, I want to thank our audience for joining us as well and for their interesting questions. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, eLabNext, for sponsoring today's webinar. Questions we did not have time for today and those submitted during the on-demand period will be addressed by our speaker via the contact information you provided at the time of registration. And this webcast can be viewed on demand for 2 years until April 5th, 2025. Labroots will alert you via email when it's available for replay. We encourage you to share that email with your colleagues who may have missed today's live event. Until next time, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.